traveler as well. For first-time listeners of my work, the opening chapter will give a condensed overview of what I have discovered about our life between lives. I hope this summary will add to your understanding of what follows, and perhaps encourage you to eventually listen to my foundational book. So, as we begin this second journey together, I want to thank all of you who have given me so much support for the hard work necessary to unlock the spiritual doorways of the mind. These associations, combined with the indulgence of many guides, particularly my own, have given me the energy to continue the task. I feel truly blessed to have been chosen as one of the messengers for this significant work. 1. The spirit world. At the moment of death, our soul rises out of its host body. If the soul is older and has experience from many former lives, it knows immediately it has been set free and is going home. These advanced souls need no one to greet them. However, most souls I work with are met by guides just outside Earth's astral plane. A young soul, or a child who has died, may be a little disoriented until someone comes closer to ground level for them. There are souls who choose to remain at the scene of their death for a while. Most wish to leave at once. Time has no meaning in the spirit world. Discarnates, who choose to comfort someone who is grieving, or have other reasons to stay near the place of their death for a while, experience no sense of time loss. This becomes now time for the soul, as opposed to linear time. As they move further away from Earth, souls experience an increasingly brilliant light around them. Some will briefly see a grayish darkness and will sense passing through a tunnel or portal. The differences between these two phenomena depend upon the exit speed of the soul, which in turn relates to their experience. The pulling sensation from our guides may be gentle or forceful, depending upon the soul's maturity and capacity for rapid change. In the early stages of their exit, all souls encounter a wispy cloudiness around them that soon becomes clear, enabling them to look off into a vast distance. This is the moment when the average soul sees a ghostly form of energy coming toward them. This figure may be a loving soulmate or two, but more often than not, it is our guide. In circumstances where we are met by a spouse or friend who has passed on before us, our guide is also close by, so they can take over the transition process. In all my years of research, I have never had a single subject who was met by a major religious figure, such as Jesus or Buddha. Still, the loving essence of the great teachers from Earth is within the personal guides who are assigned to us. By the time souls become reoriented to the place they call home, their earthliness has changed. They are no longer quite human in the way we think of a human being, with a particular emotional, temperamental, and physical makeup. For instance, they don't grieve about their recent physical death in the way their loved ones will. It is our souls that make us human on Earth, but without our bodies, we are no longer Homo sapiens. The soul has such majesty that it is beyond description. I tend to think of souls as intelligent light forms of energy. Right after death, souls suddenly feel different because they are no longer encumbered by a temporary host body with a brain and central nervous system. Some take longer to adjust than others. The energy of the soul is able to divide into identical parts, similar to a hologram. It may live parallel lives in other bodies, although this is much less common than we read about. However, because of the dual capability of all souls, part of our light energy always remains behind in the spirit world. Thus, it is possible to see your mother upon returning from a life, even though she may have died 30 Earth years before and reincarnated again. Orientation periods with our guides, which take place before joining our cluster group, vary between souls and between different lives for the same soul. This is a quiet time for counseling, with the opportunity to vent any frustrations we have about the life just ended. Orientation is intended to be an initial debriefing session, with gentle probing by perceptive, caring teacher guides. The meeting may be long or short, depending upon the circumstances of what we did or did not accomplish with regard to our life contract. Special karmic issues are also reviewed, although they will be discussed later in minute detail within our soul cluster group. The returning energy of some souls will not be sent back into their soul group right away. These are the souls who were contaminated by their physical bodies and became involved with evil acts. There is a difference between wrongdoing with no premeditated desire to hurt someone and intentional evil. The degrees of harm to others from mischief to malevolence are carefully evaluated. Those souls who have been associated with evil are taken to special centers, which some clients call intensive care units. Here, I am told, their energy is remodeled to make it whole again. Depending upon the nature of their transgressions, these souls could be rather quickly returned to Earth. They might well choose to serve as the victims of others' evil acts in the next life. Still, if their actions were prolonged and especially cruel over a number of lives, this would denote a pattern of wrongful behavior. Such souls could spend a long while in solitary spiritual existence, possibly over 1,000 Earth years. A guiding principle in the spirit world is that wrongdoing, intentional or unintentional, on the part of all souls, will need to be redressed in some form in a future life. This is not considered punishment or even penance, as much as an opportunity for karmic growth. There is no hell for souls, except perhaps on Earth. Some lives are so difficult that the soul arrives home very tired. Despite the energy rejuvenation process initiated by our guides, who combine their energy with ours at the gateway, we may still have a depleted energy flow. In these cases, more rest and solitude may be called for rather than celebrations. Indeed, many souls who desire rest receive it before reunification with their groups. Our soul groups may be boisterous or subdued, but they are respectful of what we have gone through during an incarnation. All groups welcome back their friends in their own way, with deep love and camaraderie. Homecoming is a joyous interlude, especially following a physical life where there might not have been much karmic contact with our intimate soulmates. Most of my subjects tell me they are welcomed back with hugs, laughter, and much humor, which I find to be a hallmark of life in the spirit world. The really effusive groups, who have planned elaborate celebrations for the returning soul, may suspend all their other activities. One subject of mine had this to say about his homecoming welcome. After my last life, my group organized one hell of a party, with music, wine, dancing, and singing. They arranged everything to look like a classical Roman festival with marble halls, togas, and all the exotic furnishings prevalent in our many lives together in the ancient world. Melissa, a primary soulmate, was waiting for me right up front, recreating the age that I remember her best and looking as radiant as ever. Soul groups range between 3 and 25 members, with the average having about 15. There are times when souls from nearby cluster groups may want to connect with each other. Often, this activity involves older souls who have made many friends from other groups with whom they have been associated over hundreds of past lives. Some 10 million viewers in the U.S. saw the TV show Sightings, produced by Paramount in 1995, which aired a segment about my work. Those who watched this show about life after death may remember one of my clients, by the name of Colleen, who spoke about a session we had together. She described returning to the spirit world after a former life to find a spectacular 17th century full-dress ball in progress. My subject saw over 100 people who came to celebrate her return. A time and place she had loved was lavishly reproduced, so Colleen could begin the process of renewal in style. Thus, homecoming can take place in 2 types of settings. A few souls might briefly meet a returning soul at the gateway, and then leave in favor of a guide who takes them through some preliminary orientation. More commonly, the welcoming committee waits until the soul actually returns to their spirit group. This group may be isolated in a classroom, gathered around the steps of a temple, sitting in a garden, or the returning soul could encounter many groups in a study hall atmosphere. Souls who pass by other clusters on the way to their own birth often remark that other souls with whom they have been associated in past lives will look up and acknowledge their return with a smile or wave. How a subject views their group cluster setting is based upon the soul's state of advancement, although memories of a schoolroom atmosphere are always very clear. In the spirit world, educational placement depends upon the level of soul development. Simply because a soul has been incarnating on Earth since the Stone Age is no guarantee of high attainment. In my lectures, I often remark about a client who took 4,000 years of past lives finally to conquer jealousy. I can report he is not a jealous person today, yet he has made little progress with fighting his own intolerance. It takes some students longer to get through certain lessons, just as in earthly classrooms. On the other hand, all highly advanced souls are old souls in terms of both knowledge and experience. In Journey of Souls, I broadly classified souls as beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and gave case examples of each, while explaining there are fine nuances of development among these categories. Generally, the composition of a group of souls is made up of beings at about the same level of advancement, although they have their individual strengths and shortcomings. These attributes give the group balance. Souls assist one another with the cognitive aspects of absorbing information from life experiences, as well as reviewing the way they handled the feelings and emotions of their host bodies directly related to those experiences. Every aspect of a life is dissected, even to the extent of reverse role-playing in the group, to bring greater awareness. By the time souls reach the intermediate levels, they begin to specialize in those major areas of interest where certain skills have been demonstrated. I will discuss these in more depth as we get further along in other chapters. One very meaningful aspect of my research has been the discovery of energy colors displayed by souls in the spirit world. These colors relate to a soul's state of advancement. This information, gathered slowly over many years, has been one indicator of progress during client assessments and also serves to identify other souls my subjects see around them while in a trance state. I've found that typically, pure white denotes a younger soul, and with advancement, soul energy becomes more dense, moving into orange, yellow, green, and finally the blue ranges. In addition to these center core auras, there are subtle mixtures of halo colors within every group that relate to the character aspects of each soul. For want of a better system, I have classified soul development as moving from a level 1 beginner through various learning stages to that of a master at level 6. These greatly advanced souls are seen as having a deep indigo color. I have no doubt even higher levels exist, but my knowledge of them is restricted because I only receive reports from people who are still incarnating. Frankly, I am not fond of the term level to identify soul placement, because this label clouds the diversity of development attained by souls at any particular stage. Despite these misgivings, it is my subjects who use level to describe where they are on the ladder of learning. They are also quite modest about accomplishments. Regardless of my assessment, no client is inclined to state they are an advanced soul. Once out of hypnosis, with a fully conscious, self-gratifying mind in control, they are less reticent. While in a superconscious state during deep hypnosis, my subjects tell me that in the spirit world, no soul is looked down upon as having less value than any other soul. We are all in a process of transformation to something greater than our current state of enlightenment. Each of us is considered uniquely qualified to make some contribution toward the whole, no matter how hard we are struggling with our lessons. If this were not true, we would not have been created in the first place. In my discussions of colors of advancement, levels of development, classrooms, teachers, and students, it would be easy to assume the ambience of the spirit world as one of hierarchy. This conclusion would be quite wrong, according to all my clients. If anything, the spirit world is hierarchical in mental awareness. We tend to think of organizational authority on Earth as represented by power struggles, turf wars, and the controlling use of a rigid set of rules within structure. There certainly is structure in the spirit world, but it exists within a sublime matrix of compassion, harmony, ethics, and morality, far beyond what we practice on Earth. In my experience, the spirit world also has a far-reaching centralized personnel department for soul assignments. Yet there is a value system here of overwhelming kindness, tolerance, patience, and absolute love. When reporting to me about such things, my subjects are humbled by the process. I have an old college friend in Tucson who is an iconoclast and has resisted authority all his life, which is an attitude I can empathize with myself. My friend suspects the souls of my clients have been brainwashed into believing they have control over their destiny. He believes authority of any kind, even spiritual authority, cannot exist without corruption and the abuse of privilege. My research reveals too much order upstairs, which is not to his liking. Nevertheless, all my subjects believe they have had a multitude of choices in their past, and that this will continue into the future. Advancement through the taking of personal responsibility does not involve dominance or status ranking, but rather a recognition of potential. They see integrity and personal freedom everywhere in their life between lives. In the spirit world, we are not forced to reincarnate or participate in group projects. If souls want solitude, they can have it. If they don't want to advance in their assignments, this too is honored. One subject told me, "I have skated through many easy lives, and I like it that way, because I haven't really wanted to work hard. Now that's going to change. My guide says, we are ready when you are." In fact, there is so much free will that if we are not ready to leave Earth's astral plane after death, for a variety of personal reasons, our guides will allow us to stay around until such time as we are prepared to go home. I hope this book will show that we have many choices, both in and out of the spirit world. What is very evident to me about these choices is the intense desire of most souls to prove themselves worthy of the trust placed in them. We are expected to make mistakes in this process. The effort of moving toward a greater goodness and a conjunction with the source that created us is the prime motivator of souls. Souls have feelings of humility at having been given the opportunity to incarnate in physical form. I have been asked many times if my subjects see the source of creation during their sessions. In my introduction, I said I could only go so far upriver toward the source because of the limitations of working with people who are still incarnating. Advanced subjects talk about the time of conjunction, when they will join the most sacred ones. In this sphere of dense purple light, there is an all-knowing presence. What all this means I cannot say, but I do know a presence is felt when we go before our council of elders. Once or twice between lives, we visit this group of higher beings who are a step or two above our teacher guides. In my first book, I gave a couple of case examples of these meetings. With this book, I will go into greater detail about our visitations with these masters, who are as close as I can come to the Creator. This is because it is here where an even higher source of divine knowledge is experienced by the soul. My clients call this energy force the Presence. The council is not a tribunal of judges, nor a courtroom where souls appear to be tried and sentenced for wrongdoing, although I must admit that once in a while, someone will tell me they feel going in front of the council is like being sent to the principal's office in school. Members of the council want to talk to us about our mistakes and what we can do to correct negative behavior in the next life. This is the place where considerations for the right body in our next life begin. As the time approaches for rebirth, we go to a space where a number of bodies are reviewed that might meet our goals. We have a chance to look into the future here and actually test out different bodies before making a choice. Souls voluntarily select less than perfect bodies and difficult lives to address karmic debts, or to work on different aspects of a lesson they have had trouble with in the past. Most souls accept the bodies offered to them in the selection room, but a soul can reject what is offered and even delay reincarnating. Then, too, a soul might ask to go to a physical planet other than Earth for a while. If we accept the new assignment, we are often sent to a preparation class to remind us of certain signposts and clues in the life to come, especially at those moments when primary soulmates come into our lives. Finally, when the time comes for our return, we say a temporary goodbye to our friends and are escorted to the place of embarkation for the trip to Earth. Souls join their assigned hosts in the womb of the baby's mother sometime after the 3rd month of pregnancy, so they will have a sufficiently evolved brain to work with before term. As part of the fetal state, they are still able to think as immortal souls while they get used to brain circuitry in the alter ego of their host. After birth, an amnesiac memory block sets in, and souls meld their immortal character with the temporary human mind to produce a combination of traits for a new personality. I use a systematic approach to reach the soul mind by employing a series of exercises for people in the early stages of hypnotic regression. This procedure is designed to gradually sharpen my subjects' memories of their past and prepare them to analyze critically the images they will see of life in the spirit world. After the usual intake interview, I place the client in hypnosis very quickly. It is the deepening that is my secret. Over long periods of experimentation, I have come to realize that having a client in the normal alpha state of hypnosis is not adequate enough to reach the superconscious state of the soul mind. For this, I must take the subject into the deeper theta ranges of hypnosis. In terms of methodology, I may spend up to an hour with long visualizations of forest or seashore images. Then I take the subject into their childhood years. I ask detailed questions about such things as the furniture in their house at age 12, their favorite article of clothing at age 10, the toy they loved most at age 7, and their earliest memories as a child between ages 3 and 2. We do all this before I take the client down into their mother's womb for more questions, and then into the most immediate past life for a short review. By the time the client has passed through the death scene of that life and reached the gateway to the spirit world, my bridge is complete. Continual hypnosis, deepening over the first hour, enhances the subject's disengagement from their earthly environment. They have also been conditioned to respond in detail to an intensive question and answer interview of their spiritual life. This will take us another 2 hours. Subjects who come out of trance after mentally returning home have a look of awe on their faces that is far more profound than if they had just experienced a straight past life regression. For example, a client told me, "The spirit has a diversity and complex fluid quality beyond my ability adequately to interpret." Many former clients write me about how viewing their immortality changed their lives. Here is a sample of one letter. "I have gained an indescribable sense of joy and freedom from learning my true identity. The amazing thing is that this knowledge was in my mind all the time. Seeing my non-judgmental master teachers left me in a glowing state. The insight that came to me was that the only thing of true importance in this material life is the way we live and how we treat other people. The circumstances of our life mean nothing compared to our compassion and acceptance of others. I now have a knowing rather than a feeling about why I am here and where I am going after death." I present my findings involving the 67 cases and numerous quotes in this book, as a reporter and a messenger. Before I begin every lecture to the public, I explain to my audiences that what I have to say are my truths about our spiritual life. There are many doorways to the truth. My truths come from accumulation of great wisdom from multitudes of people who have graced my life as clients over many years. If I make statements that go against your preconceptions, faith, or personal philosophy, please take what fits well for you and discard the rest. 2. Death, grief, and comfort. Denial and acceptance. Surviving the loss of a love is one of life's hardest trials. It is well known that the process of grief survival involves going through the initial shock, then coping with denial, anger, depression, and finally arriving at some sort of acceptance. Each one of these stages of emotional turmoil varies in length of time and intensity, from months up to years. Losing someone with whom we had a deep bond can bring such despair that it feels as though we are in a bottomless pit where escape is impossible because death seems so final. In Western society, the belief in the finality of death is an obstacle to healing. We have a dynamic culture where the possibility of our loss of personhood is unthinkable. The dynamics of death in a loving family is akin to a successful stage play that is thrown into disarray due to the loss of one of its stars. The supporting cast flounders around over the need for script changes. Dealing with this huge hole in the story left by the departed affects the future roles of the remaining players. There is a dichotomy here, because when souls are in the spirit world preparing for a new life, they laugh about being in rehearsals for their next big stage play on Earth. They know all roles are temporary. In our culture, we do not prepare properly for death during life, because it is something we cannot fix or change. The apprehension about death begins to gnaw at us as we get older. It is always there, lurking in the shadows, regardless of our beliefs about what happens after death. In discussing life after death on my lecture tours, I was surprised to find that many people who held very traditional religious views seemed to be the most fearful of death. The fear for most of us comes from the unknown. Unless we have had a near-death experience, or undergone a past life regression where we remember what death felt like in a former life, death is a mystery. When we must face death, either as a participant or as an observer, it can be painful, sad, and frightening. The healthy don't want to talk about it, and frequently neither do the seriously ill. Thus, our culture views death as an abhorrence. In the 20th century, there were many changes in public attitudes about life after death. During the early decades of the century, most people held traditional views that they had only one life to live. In the last third of the 20th century in the U.S., it was estimated that some 40% believed in reincarnation. This change in attitude has made acceptance of death a little easier for those people who have become more spiritual and are pulling away from a belief in oblivion after life. One of the most meaningful aspects of my work in the spirit world is learning from the perspective of the departed soul what it feels like to die, and how souls try to reach back and comfort those left behind. In this chapter, I hope to validate that what you sense deep inside after a loss is not just wishful thinking. The person you love is not really gone. Consider, too, what I said in the last chapter about soul duality. Part of your energy was left behind in the spirit world at the time of incarnation. When your love arrives back home again, you will already be there waiting with that portion of your energy which was left behind. This same energy is held in reserve for unification with the returning soul. One of the significant revelations of my research was to learn that soulmates are never truly apart from each other. The sections that follow illustrate certain methods used by souls to communicate with those they love. These techniques may begin right after physical death and can be very intense. Nevertheless, the departing soul is anxious to get moving on their way home, as the density of Earth does drain energy. In death, suddenly the soul is released and given freedom. Yet, if we have the need, souls are able to contact us on a regular basis from the spirit world. Quiet contemplation and meditation should bring a greater receptivity to the departed and provide your consciousness with a heightened sense of awareness. No verbal messages from the other side are necessary. Just removing the blocks of self-doubt and opening your mind to even the possible presence of someone you love will assist the process of grief recovery. Therapeutic techniques of souls. My opening case is that of an advanced soul named Tamano, who is in training to be a student guide. He said to me, "I have been incarnating and dying on Earth for thousands of years, and only in the last few centuries am I really getting the hang of how to alter negative thought patterns and calm people. This case begins at the point in our session where Tamano is describing the moments following his sudden death after a former life. Case 1. Subject: My wife is not feeling my presence. I'm just not getting through to her at all right now. Dr. N. What is the matter? Subject: Too much grief. It is so overpowering. Alice is in such a state of shock over my being killed that she is too numb to feel my energy. Dr. N. Tamano, has this been a recurring problem for you after your former lives, or is it just Alice? Subject: Right after death, the people who love you are either very agitated or completely numb. In either situation, their minds can shut down. My task is to attempt a balancing of mind and body. Dr. N. Where is your soul at this moment? Subject: On the ceiling of our bedroom. Dr. N. What do you want her to do? Subject: Stop crying and focus her thoughts. She doesn't believe I could still be alive, so all her energy patterns are in a terrible tangled mass. It's so frustrating. I'm right next to her and she doesn't know it. Dr. N. Are you going to give up for the moment and leave for the spirit world because her mind is closed down? Subject: That would be the easy way for me, but not for her. I care for her too much to give up now. I won't go until she at least senses that someone is in this room with her. That is my first step. Then I will be able to do more. Dr. N. How long has it been since your death? Subject: A couple of days. The funeral is over, and that is when I settled down to try and comfort Alice. Dr. N. I suppose your own guide is waiting to escort you home? Subject laughs. I have informed my guide Aeon that she would have to wait for me a while, which was unnecessary. She knows all about this. Aeon was the one who taught me. This case demonstrates a common complaint I hear from newly released souls. Many are not as proficient or determined as Tamano. Even so, most souls who are anxious to depart for the spirit world will not leave Earth's astral plane until they take some sort of action to comfort those in distress who care about them. I have condensed this client's narrative of how he assisted Alice in her grief recovery in order to focus on the soothing effects of soul energy patterns on disrupted human energy. Dr. N. Tamano, I would appreciate your taking me through the techniques you use to help your wife Alice with her grief. Subject: Well, I'll start by telling you Alice has not lost me. Takes a deep breath. I begin by throwing out a shower of my energy as an umbrella from Alice's waist to her head. Dr. N. If I were a spirit standing next to you, what would this look like? Subject smiles. A cloud of cotton candy. Dr. N. What does this do? Subject: It gives Alice a blanket of mental warmth, which is calming. I must tell you, I'm not fully proficient with this cloaking yet, but I have placed a protective cloud of energy over Alice the past 3 days since my death to make her more receptive. Dr. N. Oh, I see. You have already begun your work with Alice. Okay, Tamano. What do you do now? Subject: I begin to filter certain aspects of myself through the cloud of energy around her until I can feel the point where there is the least amount of blockage. Pause. I find it on the left side of her head behind her ear. Dr. N. Does this spot have some significance? Subject: Alice used to love to have me kiss her ears. Memories of caressing points are meaningful. When I see the opening on the left side of her head, I convert my energy to a solid beam and train it on that place. Dr. N. Does your wife feel this right away? Subject: Alice is aware of a gentle touch in the beginning, but the awareness is fragmented by grief. Then I increase the power of my beam, sending her thoughts of love. Dr. N. Do you see this working? Subject: Happily. Yes. I detect new energy patterns that are no longer dark coming from Alice. There are shifts in her emotions. Her crying stops. She is looking around, sensing me. She smiles. Now I've got her. Dr. N. Are you finished? Subject: She is going to be all right. It's time for me to go. I'll watch over her, but I know she is going to make it through this. And that's good because I'm going to be busy myself for a while. Dr. N. Does this mean you won't contact Alice further? Subject: Offended. Certainly not. I will remain in contact whenever she needs me. She is my love. The average soul is much less skillful than even the most junior of student guides. I will discuss these elements further in Chapter 4, under the sections of Energy Rehabilitation. Still, most souls I work with perform rather well from the spirit world on a physical body. Typically, they choose to work in concentrated areas, using the beam effect described by Tamano. These loving energy projections can be very potent, even from the inexperienced soul, to people who have sustained emotional and physical trauma. Eastern practices of yoga and meditation include the use of chakra body points in ways that resemble how souls partition the human body with healing energy. People who practice the art of chakra healing say that since we have an etheric body that exists in conjunction with the physical, healing must take into account both these elements. Chakra work includes unblocking our emotional and spiritual energy through various points of the body, from the spine, heart, throat, forehead, and so on, to open and harmonize the body. Ways spirits connect with the living. Somatic touch. I have taken the clinical terms of somatic bridging and therapeutic touch and combined them to describe the method by which discarnate souls use directed energy beams to touch various parts of an incarnated body. Healing is not limited to the chakra body points I spoke about earlier. Souls who are reaching back to comfort the living look for areas that are most receptive to their energy. We saw this in case 1, behind the left ear. The energy pattern becomes therapeutic when bridges are established to connect the two minds of the sender and receiver in telepathic transmission. Bridging by thought transmissions to a body which is hurting is somatic when the methods are physiological. It involves the subtle touching of body organs while eliciting certain emotional reactions, which can include the use of the senses. Skillfully applied energy beams can evoke recognition by sight, sound, taste, and smell. The whole idea with recognition is to convince the person grieving that the individual they love is still alive. The purpose of somatic touch is to allow the grief-stricken person to come to terms with their loss by acquiring an awareness that absence is only a change of reality and not final. Hopefully, this will allow the bereaved to move on and complete their own life constructively. Souls are also quite capable of falling into habit patterns with somatic touch. The next case is an example of a 49-year-old man who had died of cancer. While the soul of this man does not demonstrate much skill, his intentions are good. Case 2. Dr. N. What technique do you use to reach out to your wife? Subject. Oh, my old standby, the center of the chest. Dr. N. Where exactly on the chest?